Good morning. I'm feeling especially curmudgeonous today. I guess that's a word. Curmudgeonly. Let somebody else figure that out. One thing I've often said, in jest mostly in the past, when talking with various people about the state of humanity, is that evolving past Homo erectus was a big mistake. And like I said, I've said that tongue-in-cheek many times in the past. But the more I think on it, the more I'm convinced that's actually a truth. For those of y'all who don't share my passion for paleoanthropology, Homo erectus is an ancient species. I'm not sure exactly when they were around. I want to say from about 1.2 million years ago to about 200,000 years ago, but I'm not exactly sure. I should have looked that up before starting this video. But, roughly, there's evidence of them using fire a million years ago. So we know that they were around then at least, And I mean, the skeletal evidence and all that. But they were a more primitive version of us. They're our ancestors. We all come from Homo erectus, and before that, different Homo species. But not Australopithecus, I don't think. No Homo there. No Homo. But I could be wrong. And one of the things I love about paleoanthropology is that it's always changing, man. There is literally no fucking point in buying a book about, the Homo Sapien evolution, because they're always finding new stuff. When I was born, they didn't even have Homo florensis yet, the hobbits. And when I was reading Clan of the Cave Bear in the early 80s, I remember a bunch of scientists were saying it was garbage because humans and Neanderthals weren't compatible mating-wise, which is a point in the book, a storyline in the book. So, and now we all know that most people have Neanderthal DNA, at least from my lineage. I've got 2.4% Neanderthal DNA, I believe, 2.2, 2.4. And with people in Asia, it's not necessarily Neanderthal. It's what's the one with a D? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. Neanderthal and Denisovian. Yeah, Chinese people have more Denisovian genetics than Neanderthal, and we've got more Neanderthal than Denisovian, according to current research, which could change tomorrow or even before I finish uploading this video. It's just always so fascinating, man, where we came from. You and I, we are an unbroken line that stretches back millions of years of our ancestors propagating, surviving, maybe not thriving all the time, but surviving long enough to pass their genes on. I've long said that's the primary purpose of life, is to pass on our genes. These human bodies are just vessels for doing that. It's all about the genetics. So, but back to my original statement about Homo erectus. Homo erectus, man, imagine if we just stopped development there, okay? Now, they had a slightly smaller brain pan than Homo sapiens and Neanderthal. I would say it was around, at max, 1,100 cm, whereas Homo sapiens about 13, and Neanderthal is about 1,500, I want to say. So, and in Homo erectus, that's the late end Homo erectus. that have the 1100 centimeter brain pan. We found earlier, like, examples of them of like around 700 or so. But anyhow, they were definitely not as smart as us. Now, I'm not saying that because of the brain size. Brain size doesn't correlate to intelligence. It's about the neurons that are in the brain. How many neurons you have. Homo sapiens probably had more neurons than Neanderthal, although not a lot. And we definitely had more than Homo erectus or Australopithecus or Florensis or any of the groups that came before us, because we can see that because only Homo sapiens were as creative. There is some evidence that Neanderthal had a sort of primitive forms of art, some rudimentary cave paintings, seashells being made into necklaces, the arrangement of various items into sort of a symbolic type of structure. But, nothing really beyond that. And they were here long enough that if they were going to, start writing Shakespeare, they would have done it. Same with Homo erectus. We're the only ones who got that far. And that's the offside of Homo sapiens, man, is that we are capable of such great works of beauty, such great works of compassion. But is the trade-off worth it? Homo erectus, what they did, man, they had fire, they had weapons, they had tools. Nothing as advanced as what the Homo sapiens or Neanderthals would make later on, 500,000 years later. But still, they had all the essentials. When we were Homo erectus, we spent our days, living in caves, I guess, some other sort of natural structures. I doubt that we had buildings like we would think of them. Make a fire, go hunting. Ladies would go gather up some stuff, some herbs and berries and whatever, and we just lived this nomadic lifestyle. And most of the times when we went hunting, we'd win, but often we'd lose. And nature kind of kept a balance that way. Another thing that we rarely did, at least according to logic, is various tribes of Homo erectus didn't fight each other, except in the most dire of circumstances, I'm sure. All action that is taken by sentient beings has to be weighed on a risk assessment, a risk versus reward. Most of the times, fighting other sentient creatures, be it Homo sapien versus Homo sapien or Erectus versus Erectus or whatever, there's a lot of danger involved in that. And therefore, less chance to pass our genes on. So when a band of Homo erectus came into the hunting grounds of another band of Homo erectus, well, unless they were starving, they'd probably just, move on. They'd say, hey, our bad, didn't know you were here, didn't know it was occupied, we're going to go on down the road. And of course, all that ends with the invention of agriculture. Because then you got shit worth defending. And agriculture is very much a Homo sapien invention. Neanderthals and Erectus, they would have picked apples from trees if they came across them. They didn't think to plant the seeds. At least if they did, we have no evidence of it. And you sort of have to go off what the evidence is. As paltry as it may be at times. I wish I could look back into the past, how fascinating that would be. But anyhow, if we'd never evolved past Homo erectus, we wouldn't have war. We wouldn't be fucking up the earth with pollution. We'd have what we needed. We take what we needed from nature and just live our lives. Always in little small groups. You wouldn't have rampant diseases, because diseases mostly start becoming an issue when lots of people gather together. And you only see that in Homo sapiens during the Neolithic. The Neolithic is from about 10,000 BC or so to about 2000 BC. Fascinating period of time. We've made so much technological innovation just during the Neolithic that it's flabbergasting. If Homo sapiens has been around for 300,000 years, imagine that, 300,000 years, building upon inventions that our ancestors made, until finally we start planting crops 10,000 years ago. Or 12,000 years ago. I'm not sure. Anyhow, and then once you start planting the crops, well, then you do have room for stuff like art and music and philosophy, religion. But I'm just not sure the trade-off was worth it. Maybe we would have just been happier just sticking at Homo erectus. Humans, we're too, Homo sapiens, we're too clever by half. I'll be very surprised if we aren't the source of our own extinction. Anyhow, even Neanderthals are too clever by half. Homo erectus, I should have stopped there. We'd all be sitting around a campfire telling stories and eating meat. Regardless, if you saw this, hope you have a good day, and excuse my ramble.